3 years ago, Iceland was on its knees, a tiny nation ruined by financial hubris. Today, the island's economy is growing again. Anger and despair are now tempered by tentative signs of recovery. But there is a problem. Iceland hasn't paid the bill for the financial havoc caused by its risk-addicted banks. My guest today is Iceland's Finance Minister, Steingrímur Sigfússon. If Iceland is serious about seeking EU membership, isn't it time to get serious about meeting its international obligations? Steingrímur Sigfússon in Reykjavik, welcome to Hard Talk.
Good morning.
The first question for you, I referred to the meltdown in Iceland 3 years ago. What's the state of your economy today? Are you still in intensive care or are you recovering?
Oh, we are definitely recovering and making a lot of progress. We successfully completed the IMF standby arrangement program this end of August. And we actually re-entered the international capital markets in June and successfully issued $1 billion. So there are many signs, both internally and also externally, proving that Iceland has come a long way since October 2008. But of course our problems are not over. We are not out of the woods entirely. And this has not come without sacrifice and cost to the Icelandic population.
Well, we'll talk about sacrifice and cost in a moment, but just sticking with this notion that you have actually staged a remarkable recovery. And I look at some of the figures. You've got growth, I believe, expected this year of 2.5%, which, of course, many people in the European Union would regard as a triumph right now. And it's that contrast with the European Union I'm interested in. You in Iceland have taken decisions over the past 3 years that would have been impossible inside the European Union. Do you think there's a lesson there?
Well, you're right, both in terms of having our own currency that has that devalued and created a very, very handsome competitive advantage for our exports and competitive industries. That is one factor. Also through this, the economy adopted very, very quickly to changed circumstances. We also ran a rather untraditional program with the IMF and did it our own way. We delivered the economical goals, but we architected our measures in such a way as to bring the Icelandic society as softly through this as possible. We make a very strong commitment to being a Nordic welfare society after all, and want to prove that. So in many ways it has helped Iceland to be independent, to be small. After all, it's quicker to turn a small boat around than a big ship, and to have our own tools and means to work ourselves out of this.
Yeah, some would say...
So yes, it has made a difference.
Yeah, some would say it's helped being small and adaptable, but it's also helped in a certain way being irresponsible, because unlike a country like Ireland, which saw an obligation as a state to take on the terrible debts of its private banks, Iceland took a very different view and just said to the banks, you go bust, we're not going to bail you out in any way whatsoever.
Well, listen, sir, this had nothing to do with irresponsibility. The fact of the matter was that the banks were far too big for the small economy of Iceland to even attempt to rescue them. That may well turn out to be a fortune for us, or a luck in the long run, but it was not a matter of free choice. It was simply like this: the banks, with their extensive international operations and with a balance sheet about 10 times the economy of Iceland, it was totally impossible that we could have rescued them.
Yeah, well, with respect, of course, it was a real irresponsibility of the political class as a whole, of which you are a part, to allow that to happen in the first place. I mean, you were living in a fantasy land, weren't you?
Well, you're right there. We did a lot of mistakes in the years leading up to the collapse of the banks, and we have looked that in the eye. We have looked in the mirror. We had a very thorough investigation launched by the Parliament that showed us the weaknesses, the mistakes that were done in the years before. So I'm not saying we don't carry responsibility here, But when it came to the banks, Iceland did not have a choice. We had to do something along the lines we did in October 2008 when we put the emergency law in place to avoid a total meltdown of the Icelandic economy. And that would not have served anyone, not our creditors or anyone, if Iceland had completely fallen apart. So the rescue operations since October 2008, at the end of the day, will also benefit those who had lent Iceland money.
Well, yes, let's get to this, because you objected to my use of the word irresponsibility, but I'm, if you don't mind, going to stick with the word a little bit longer, and here's why. You have received, as a nation, over the last 3 years, billions and billions of dollars in support and help from, in no particular order, the IMF, the European Union, the Nordic countries, the UK, Netherlands and Germany, lending all to Reykjavik. As a result, as you've just said to me, your economy is showing signs of real improvement. But as you improve your economy, you do not appear to be prepared to assume your responsibilities to those people that Iceland still owes money to.
Well, first I must correct you. We have not got a single penny or a cent from European Union. On the contrary.
Well, individual member states of the European Union have given you money, or at least given you financial supports and guarantees.
Well, no, well, it's like this. We entered an IMF program, we got some funding from IMF, and then the Nordic countries and Poland and the Faroe Islands contributed to financing the program. No one has given us anything, and these are loans that we will fully repay. When it comes to the dispute between Iceland and the UK and the Netherlands, the so-called Icesave case, if you're referring to that, obviously that has been a difficult case, but what we actually did in October 2008 through the emergency law was to safeguard the depositors of failed banks as well as possible. We made deposits priority claims into failed banks, and now the good news are that the recovery is improving in the old Landsbanki. The latest figures are 100%, so it's very likely or almost certain that in the coming very few years the whole principal amount will be repaid.
Yeah, but with respect, so Minister, that's not the point, is it? The point is, and it's just been rammed home in the last few days with a report from the surveillance authority that supervises the rules governing the European Economic Area of which Iceland is a part. The point is that the rules bound you to pay 20,000 euros compensation to any depositor who lost money in an Icelandic bank, and you didn't do that. It fell to the British and Netherlands governments to do that for depositors because you wouldn't do it. You now owe millions of dollars, billions I should say, to the UK and Netherlands governments, but you're refusing to pay, and you're saying you'll wait until Landsbanki can sort of produce the assets for itself. But that's not good enough. It doesn't meet the rules.
Well, it's like this. We were not in position. The bank failed and he could not pay out. We were not in position immediately after to pay out that money. Obviously not. So the UK and Netherlands authorities decided to do so themselves, to calm things down, and they didn't want to run on their other banks. We have all the time been willing to try to negotiate or find a solution to this, but we have pointed out that nowhere in this directive or anywhere in the European regulations does it state that there is a state guarantee behind this. And that legal dispute has been at the core of this all the time.
But the point is the rulings have gone against you. They've looked at this very carefully because you objected. And as I say, the most recent ruling from the ultimate surveillance authority is that you are wrong, and they've given you 3 months to meet your obligations. Will you do it?
We disagree with the after surveillance authority, and now the case rests with them. But as I say, the good news is that the outpayments will start soon, and the principal amount will be recovered from the old Landsbanki. And this was
you don't know that, Minister. You don't know that for sure, do you? Because you can't be quite sure what the assets are, and you can't be quite sure whether they'll meet the the real huge numbers that you owe to the UK and Netherlands governments, and indeed to town councils across the UK who are crying out for finance, and they have many millions of dollars locked in Icelandic accounts, which of course are useless.
Well, the certainty regarding the estate of the old Landsbanki is becoming more and more, because more and more cash is already collected in, and the outlooks are very good. So we are very optimistic that the recovery will be 100%. And the Icesave deposits are the main priority claims in the estate. And as I said, by making them priority claims, we safeguarded the depositors, including the British communities or charities, including what the UK and Netherlands authorities paid out, including their top-ups as well as possible. So I think, in all fairness, this should be looked at as well. And may I then also, point out... Hang on, without getting too technical,
you can't even guarantee that they will be priority creditors, because other creditors, hedge funds and bondholders, are now looking at that pile of money that Landsbanki, you say, will eventually have to pay back all of its creditors, and they're saying, why give priority to the depositors of Icesave? Why give it to the charities and the councils? We want a piece of that too, and you can't be sure they won't win their legal argument.
No, you are right, sir. They are testing that for the courts, but we will get a Supreme Court ruling on this every day now, and we are optimistic that that will fall our way, because the District Court of Reykjavik confirmed the validity of this law. But I would like to mention that there is another side to this. If we are going deeply into the contacts between UK and Iceland, the actions taken against us in UK in October 2008 were very harmful for Iceland, freezing our assets using anti-terrorist law. And then we have just got a report trying to map what this did cost the general Icelandic businesses, because their change of trade were broken, and a loss of reputation. And we get a figure that amounts to something probably like 5 billion ISK that Icelandic businesses lost because of the actions taken against us in UK in October 2008. I'm speaking here both about the freezing of assets and using anti-terrorist law.